Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Happy Tuesday. My name is Meredith White. I am the current president of the Foreign Language Association of Georgia. Woohoo. And we have partnered, I know, right? We have partnered with Klett Publishing, Klett World Languages, and we are super excited tonight to present wherever she is on your screen, Jessie Feliz, who's going to talk to us about maintaining and sustaining joy in our practices. And I'm super excited. We're going to have all of the resources are going to be in one place with the recording. And you can just click on the beautiful thumbnail with Jessie's face and you can get all the resources shared and all the things as well. Jessie, tell us where you are, what you're up to. Let's rock and roll.
Hola, 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 everybody. Gracias, Meredith. Thank you. I am Jessie Feliz. I am from Detroit,
Woo-hoo.
Michigan, all day, every day. Even though my heart is totally Tico, I got a Tico corazón. I lived in Costa Rica for 3 years, had my daughter, my one of my two children. Look, when I was younger, tuve el parto en casa, okay? My second child in hospital. So just changes. But I'm so thankful to be here with you all. I'm a K through 12 certified Spanish language educator with más de 15 años de experiencia in public charter, private, and now I support various schools with my company, Spanish Swag, and I'm opening up the Jessie Feliz Learning Center here in Detroit for the fall. So I just love encouraging students and helping them develop an intrinsic motivation for learning in general, specifically learning languages. And I also equally love working with educators because it literally is about los dos, right? And really all stakeholders involved. It's about administrators, about students, it's about families, los papas, los padres, mamás, and everything. And so that's what I'm about. And I'm a big supporter of how do you cultivate joy from within. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And shout out to Klett World Languages and Flag for having me here. I appreciate. Os quiero mucho. Gracias por la oportunidad. Y gracias a ustedes, porque sabe una cosa, es el fin de año, ¿no? Like some people have already finished the school year. We're testing graduation. I literally had a meeting until 5:30, had to go to my cousin's prom send-off. Thankfully, it's only 15 minutes away and just got right back to chit-chat with Meredith and Mahe briefly before we get started. So life be lifing, as we say, but I'm so thankful to be here with all of you all. So let's go ahead and get started so we can honor everyone's time. So we're talking about the joy effect and the importance of prioritizing emotional well-being and how it improves learning outcomes. And I want to add to that learning outcomes for both scholars and educators, because as an educator, this is an ongoing journey, right? This is not a one-time, oh, I've acquired my education, I have my certification, and we're done. No, this is a life learning experience as an educator, and we have to prioritize our emotional well-being, because if we don't have our emotional well-being in a healthy place and know what self-supporting practices we need for our own selves, then that's going to greatly impact what is happening in the classroom. And so while this is created for world language educators, it's not even a strategy, it's more so like the mindsets that we're going to be talking about relates to all of us. It doesn't matter your content area. This is about humanizing the learning experience, which includes us, because we're human too, right? So just to kick us off, let's have a sensory snapshot of joy. I absolutely love using Padlet. I love using it for fourth grade plus. Students can come in with their Chromebooks, or if your school approves, students use their own devices. They can scan a QR code and you can have it where they can contribute a Giphy, an image, a video, they can audio record. So it's like, how do we leverage technology, right? Technology does not take the place of docentes. It should not, in my opinion, but we can leverage it to be more responsive to this generation. So I want us to do the same thing that I do with my kids. So that you want to answer this question using words, sounds, images, GIFs, or even recording something, express the concept of joy in a creative and impactful way. So go ahead and scan, and you can see what other educators have done. And Meredith has also placed it in the chat box because some of our friends may be on the phone. So I'm going to allocate un minuto para nosotros, 1 minute for us to go ahead and scan and post. And you may even want to make a comment to someone else. I'm going to add something new. What does joy look like? What does it sound like for you? So I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute, starting now. About 35 more seconds. Fifteen more seconds. Bueno, ya. And so you'll have access to this even after our session. And I just want to encourage you to even look at some of the comments and look at what some of the posts were of other educators. And actually, one of them, one of the comments that was written before from a few weeks ago, I'm actually including it in the slide. So I will reference that. I do like this one comment, watching students do something they thought they couldn't, to be an observer of that, right? I love that someone has them getting a facial and they have the kiwi or the cucumbers over their eyes. What does joy look like you in a way that you can express it? It's not a one size fits all expression of that. So vamos a continuar. So here's a brief flow of our session. We're going to be talking briefly about emotional frequencies, as well as how the brain functions with learning as it relates to emotion. We are not going to do the let's plant reflective thinking activity together, but I will model it because this is a really good activity that you can do with your colleagues. This is also a really awesome activity that you can take and transfer it to with your students, especially if you have like a homeroom classroom or a classroom that may not even be your content. Because I know oftentimes as elementary, middle, or high school, some schools call it a crew class or a homeroom class, especially if you have that intimate non-content focus. It's just a really good relationship building activity. If we have time, we'll do some crowd joy, collective exchanges, again, using Padlet, and then we'll have some breakout room discussions as well. All right, so before we even talk about emotional well-being, I am a big supporter of, we cannot dismiss the context of our realities, period, right? Everything that you see right here is what happens. And this list is not exhaustive, right? We have lesson planning that is different from actual lesson delivery, while you still are managing your classroom culture, right? There's assessments and all the pressure that goes along with the pre-execution, along with you actually doing the assessing and administration of that. Obviously, it's relationships, not just with your students, with their parents, relationships with your colleagues, with administrators, right? And relationship with yourself. Let's talk about that part. And with yourself and your own personal relationships, because again, we are not robots. We are not AI. We are HI. We are human beings. So we have a lot of things going on within our own selves. And there's grading, right? And then all the administrative tasks that we have to do for IEPs, for 504 plans. Some schools I see, they want templates completed weekly or bi-weekly, however it is. Some schools are more relaxed. Sometimes you have to internalize a scripted curriculum. Sometimes you are creating everything yourself, and you may be up late at night on Teachers Pay Teachers trying to figure out what to do, right? Those are a whole lot of things, and that's just one side of the spectrum. Let's talk about that classroom culture, right? Because now you are managing not only different behaviors, but also students come with a variety of ability levels. Some have exposure to the languages that you're teaching, some do not. And that's still different from our cognitive processing ability levels, right? Then engagement. You may plan this amazing lesson, but your first period receives it differently than your class right after lunch. And your class before lunch receives it differently than your last hour. Engagement matters. Then there's a physical environment. I have worked with some educators. I've been a teacher. I've been an instructional coach. I've been a department chair. I've played a lot of different roles. And so I look at different things and I train teachers. I work still directly with kids. And so I know sometimes we get caught up on the physical environment, and el ambiente es muy importante. But what we're going to be talking about is, what is the emotional environment? Because you can have a beautifully decorated classroom and students do not feel beautiful in your room. You may not even feel beautiful in your room. So physical environment still is important, right? However, we need to be mindful that the environment is not limited to just cosas que son tangible, no? And then parent communication. That's a whole lot of things we're balancing al mismo tiempo at the same time. And so with all of that, what the basis is our emotional well-being. And when I'm talking about that emotional well-being, everyone, as it relates to joy, student joy is not more important than teacher joy. Teacher joy is not more important than student joy. It's about balance. Because in life, we have to balance the scales, right? This is on Padlet, and I love this phrase. And this, ever since Eula Boyd, she is a world language educator. We had our Spanish swag virtual symposium last year was in Detroit. We'll be back next year in Detroit, but every other year we'll go virtual unless we go to Baltimore. I'm still trying to map that out for next year. But Eula said something very powerful. She said, joy is an inside job. Yes, it is. It is not an outside job. You have to be committed to doing that inner work, right? Because students, I have to say old school now because as time goes by, this song probably is like 10, 15 years ago. It was a song with Swiss Beats and Jadakiss that said, she's real, he's not. She's real, but you not. If you real, everybody clap your hands. Kids know when it's real versus phony. Kids are not looking for perfection at all. They're looking for authenticity. And being culturally responsive is even less about the racial ethnicity. You still need to be considerate of the rich cultural capital that all of your students bring. But do not limit yourself on that. Know that it also is about being responsive to the generation. When we talk about our alpha learners, those are our elementary kids up to about grade 6. When we talk about Gen Z, your upper middle school, high school, and college. Anxiety is considered to be at an all-time high, specifically with Gen Z. And when you ask yourself the reason why, be considerate of the following. I always think about the heart symbol. This is what I convey. I was in Puerto Rico doing a teacher training in April. And I had everyone, I said, haga corazón, make a heart. And I brought it to everyone, think about it. Prior generations, even we did Valentine's Day or whenever we saw a heart, we associated with the word love. Now, your definition of love varies based on your home culture. Me and Meredith had an amazing podcast conversation last year when I was in Atlanta, and we were talking about that home culture, right? That home language. So your brain software is based on your upbringing. It's not limited to that because we can all upgrade through experiences in your classroom, through experiences outside of your home. But your initial default programming comes from your microcosm, which is your home, right? But so think about the concept of love. Now, specifically for Gen Z, because they were raised right with social media. It's a difference in our alphas. They have different shared generational traits. Gen Z, your high school students associate the heart with validation. It means like. Think about on Instagram. High school kids aren't Facebook people. They don't see the differentiation between me gusta versus me encanta, I like versus I love symbol. Think about TikTok. Think about all the platforms. The actual symbol of a heart represents validations. Even if what is being posted is not even real, it still can be validated. So what does that do? It induces anxiety. Our kids need authenticity. They need us to be authentic with them and model these things, because anxiety is at an all-time high, because for the generation they've been born into, they are associating approval from the outside world as part of what validates who they are. You see, I haven't even talked anything about bonjour, konnichiwa, español, because we have to humanize this language learning experience. The reason why the buy-in factor is high in certain classrooms more than in other classrooms is because of that joy. And we're going to get a little bit deeper into it. And it relates to this human to human interaction. Joy is the inside job, y'all. So when we're considering all the different things that we're balancing, and there's even more, this is, again, not a total complete list. These are just some items that already, just imagine, this is a lot already to even process. Shout out to Finland, because the reason why their school system and the teachers are ranked as loving their profession is because generally they only teach for like half days live with kids, because all these other items they're able to attend to during the workday. Don't you think that impacts the quality of life, right? We do live in Los Estados Unidos de America. So we have to be proactive and can be committed to doing the inner work, especially given the place where we reside and where we work. I mean, we have to be responsive, what do we say in the beginning, to the context of our reality, right? That is how, in spite of everything that happens in el pasado, y en el futuro, y hoy en día en el presente, that we can still cultivate joy when you are more proactive about the reality and the context than being reactive. So we're going to have a brief turn and talk, and Meredith is going to put us in some breakout rooms. And I think, Meredith, if we can do possibly like 3-4 minutos máximo, and she will share the screen when you're in your breakout rooms. Go ahead, and I do ask you to turn on your camera if you're in the breakout room, but if you really don't want to, I'm not going to be mad. But I would like for you to choose one of these questions and just discuss that with another colleague, thinking about what internal resources or practices do you rely on to sustain joy in spite of external context, right? Or how do your perceptions of these external factors that we just talked about, all those things that we have to do, the realities as being a teacher, how does that impact our ability to cultivate it from within, right? And how does it influence our well-being as educators? So go ahead and please join the rooms that Meredith has assigned you to, and we'll be back in about 4 minutes.
Bada bing, bada boom, done.
Dismiss it. I think
Right.
that dismissiveness in any aspect of our lives, financial, physical,
Yep.
spiritual, emotional, you know, when we dismiss things, because I think this is easier, like form of escapism. Let me just not sweep it under the rug. Right. But if we do not address those things, it's going to seep out in one way or the other. And let's just be more proactive and less reactive. One thing, oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Meredith. And I'd love to hear if anyone wants to share with Meredith is something that, that you want to pull back from the breakout room you were in. But one thing that that Kelly and Pam said that was very similar, and I appreciate that they can reflect on more than a decade of experience. They can see the increase in anxiety and the increase in rawness as far as just like, but it's still a form of self-advocacy to just be real about how you feel. But what we talked about is also where ignoring the self-accountability part. And so like cultural responsiveness is a lot to do. The culture is also the generation. And so being mindful of that, because we're out in the field, we are field researchers. I know we look at scholarly texts to provide rationale for this theory that or this strategy, but we're in the field every single day and we make observations, you know, so we want to consider those things so that we can better have a better overall humanized experience for everybody.
Yeah. I think too, like our conversation the last time you and I were together, we touched on support, and I think that's super important. For me, finding joy at work starts with defining what support means to me. And I think that's huge because it's super easy. It's like when you're going through a tough time or like you're moving and like, you know, you need 7 different people to carry boxes or whatever, but people don't go, hey, what time are you moving? I'll come help you. They get, hey, let me know if you need any help. And sometimes administrators can do the same thing. Let me know what you need, but sometimes you don't know what you need. You need someone to anticipate your needs or like help you articulate them so that you can say, actually, you know what, for me right now, I've been doing it X amount of years, you know, like support means like, leave me alone, you know, like maybe just scoot over and, you know, if I'm selling it, you're buying it. Like if I want a material, maybe you give me a budget, or so, like there's things you can work out that are like, other than that, I don't need that. I maybe don't need a lot of feedback. Maybe I already have some professional confidence and all those kind of things that for me spark joy. So support and articulating that can also be so huge.
I
People
have a
don't
big
know
mic.
what they
I
don't
know it's a
know
big
till we
mic,
tell
but
them,
there's my mic
you know.
drop. What you just said.
Dropped it. There it goes. But it's
Yes.
true. Like we expect people to read our minds. It's like
Yeah.
a romantic partner or like a life partner, where you're like, how could you not have done that? Did you say anything? You
Right.
said you didn't want to do anything for your birthday. We're not doing anything for your
It's
birthday. Now
the
you're
part of the
mad.
humanizing the whole experience is it's not a one size fits all.
Right.
And so
Right.
we have to even differentiate from an administrative level. We
Mhm.
need to differentiate the support that we provide our teachers.
Yeah. And
When you're
realize
a
that they're human
department
too.
chair, come
Hmm.
on.
And realize that they're human too. And they're probably
Oh, of
going,
course.
no.
Of course. Because even at the administrative level,
Yeah.
there's pressure there, so it really is like we just have to be mindful of it. I want to talk about these emotional frequencies
Yeah.
because this is some amazing stuff. And again, I'm not speaking specifically about world language instruction in isolation, because this is applicable to any field, and especially us as educators, because we are working. This is a service, right? And we can do a disservice and sometimes not even be aware of it. So we have to be reflective practitioners. So Dr. David Hawkins, which I find it very amazing, developed this scale of emotions, this emotional frequency chart. And so I think also oftentimes things that are intangible, such as like happiness and joy and grief, we may see someone when they're grieving looking sad, right? Or when someone is experiencing peace, they may appear like it's zen or that, but it actually can be measured, right, by the vibrations, the frequency that's put out. And I find it very interesting that shame, look at the scale, everyone. Shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, those are at the bottom. Those are lower vibrational of emotions versus look where joy is. It's up high on the scale. I think it's very interesting also to know, look where it says alpha 7.5 at 12 hertz. Courage emits less of a frequency than willingness. I find out of all of this on the scale, that is what stands out the most to me. Because courage is we can say that we have the courage to do something, we can feel brave, all these things. But with neutrality, unless we actually are willing to do the work, then it's still just talk. Right. And so, even modeling this for our students, I find it very interesting because that courage is different than the willing. This is about the emotions. Remember, we talked about there's physical environment, but emotions, as Loretta Hammond says, they are contagious. And we want to avoid spreading toxic emotions. And part of it being reflective. Imagine you're walking into the class. I mean, students are walking into the classroom, and you are human too. And you are you are emoting out lower vibrations of emotions. Your students will feel that and will respond accordingly. I was working with TFA. I did a teacher training. I believe that was in April. I don't think it was March. I believe it was April. It's kind of a blur now. But it was the springtime. And I love that a fellow Michigan educator said the following. She said the way her schedule was set up this year was crazy. And so she had first graders in the morning. And then she literally, the next, whenever, maybe she had like 2, 3 sections of first grade. And then she had fourth graders. And literally it was just that regular, 3, 5 minute break between the bell ringing from first grade after 2, 3 preps. I mean, 2, 3 sessions at the first to then fourth grade. And you can imagine lots of arts and crafts, lots of crayons, lots of all of that, because there are little people, right? So the room would be chaos. And then her fourth graders would come right in. And she told the group that at the beginning of the year, all the way up to October, she was feeling stressed out. And then she recognized that she had an attitude when the fourth graders came in. And then she felt convicted, like, you know what? The fourth graders, just because she didn't have time to, organize your teaching, we all been there. It's a lot. with her protocols. And this is a seasoned educator, and this was the first year where she had this first grade to direct with fourth grade without like an actual prep time as she had before, to like, you know, it's basically a whole different thing that you're teaching. And so she humbled herself, because look at that pride. Oh, that pride got us feeling good. It's higher up on the scale. Even though you're stressed, you can start to feel as if you're in a better place in space, but it's really pride that's raising you up. But it doesn't actually mean that you're experiencing peace. Pride and peace are two different frequencies. And so she humbled herself because she still was feeling stressed, and she was authentic with her scholars and said, fourth graders, I need your help. When you all come in, I need you to help me clean up this room. Can we just take the first 5 minutes, get some Lysol wipes, help me organize, because I'm really stressed out and I don't want to bring that energy to your class. And you know what? Her kids embraced it, and now they take ownership of it. Oh no, I got this table, you get the trash, because now she's being real. Like, listen, I'm a human. This is a crazy schedule. I should have an actual prep or a break, because I should be able to change who I am from teaching 3 sections of first grade to now teaching the rest of fourth grade. It's different. Even if it's similar learning objective, you know, the execution is going to be different. But because she humanized her own self, the students received that. And she didn't have to be caught up in pride. Instead, she actually addressed her stress, and the kids were willing. You like, you know, so it really is contagious, and it can be contagious on either side of the spectrum. So shout out to the educator. Michelle Hughes says, the brain is increasingly open to learning when learning is joyful. Look at this. Joy's up top, y'all. Like literally the amygdala, we're going to talk about that. There's an amygdala hijack. It hijacks the cognitive processing, the higher order thinking skills, when joy is not present, when acceptance isn't there, right? When there's not peace, when it's the lower vibrations of emotions, you're not even at the capacity, your brain will not even let you do what you want your kids to do, or what you want to even be able to do, right? So let's talk about this. And this is my go-to phrase. Don't just internalize a lesson, humanize it. Humanize it. Like literally consider your students and yourself when you're crafting these lessons. And the joy factor will naturally, organically populate. It's just a beautiful thing. Like, and that does not take away the context of all that stuff that's going on. It's not. We're not dismissing that. It's real out here. They say it's real in these streets. It's real in these classrooms. Pam said the kids could be, it's really raw. Yes, it is. And you have to be mindful of that too, right? Let's briefly talk about the brain functioning and learning. I have zero capacity at the moment to go back to school, even though I'm really tempted to get this certificate in neuroscience, because I'm so intrigued by this as it relates. I'm just like, Lord, how in the world am I going to fit that in the schedule when I tell you my schedule's so crazy as it is? But I may just have to like do independent research. I just can't commit to like another scheduled program at the moment. But this is so intriguing to me. We all know about blooms. I'm just using it as a reference point. I'm not here to preach about blooms. But I want us to consider this. The highest order thinking skill that, remember, it was revised. It used to be something else. Wasn't it like, well, judge? What did it used to be, y'all? Before, they didn't used to say create back in the day. It was something else we used, the old blooms. They changed it to create. Maybe they said synthesize. I think that may have been the word we used to use. But then they wanted to change it to actually create, because synthesizing is making a copy versus creativity, which I keep up here is one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein. La creatividad es la inteligencia divirtiéndose. Creativity is just intelligence having fun. Shout out to Albert Einstein. Love that quote. It inspires my life. We say, oh, the brain is separated, the creative, artistic people versus the logical. Get out of here. Albert Einstein, one of the most intelligent minds on the planet ever, said your intelligence is just having fun. That's creativity. Mic drop. I'm doing that. Rest in peace, Albert Einstein. That's for you. So let's talk about this with this. I want you to keep in mind blooms as we look at this brief video about what happens with this amygdala hijack. Meredith, please give me a thumbs up. Hopefully the audio works. I know sometimes when we play videos in Zoom, it acts a little funky.
We've all had those moments when we let our emotions take over, and we did something that we later regretted. We end up saying, I can't believe I did that. What was I thinking? The amygdala helps you recognize and respond to threats. Too well that negative emotions can drive us to make some really bad decisions we'll regret later.
Okay, so I love this quote by Brother B. I'm not going to jack up his name because I respect him too much. I do not want to do that. But he says he is a scientific scholar. Why do we talk about imagination separately from memory? There's absolutely no way you can imagine, aka create anything without the past. So if we're talking even on an emotional level, I know the emphasis is like, oh, we want kids to use higher order thinking skills to complete this speaking assessment or to complete this essay in Spanish, in French, in Arabic. And they need to be able to pull back past memories of what they've already learned on a content level. Yes, right? You want identify, understand. You scaffold it, right? You chunk up the learning processes and you scaffold to build these skills in the target language. 1000%. I want us to address what we're talking about with joy factor is what memories do they have on an emotional level of their in the context of being in your classroom? Are they experiencing shame on a regular basis in your classroom? Are you? Are they experiencing stress on a regular basis in your classroom? Are you? You know, and so I thought earlier when Meredith said about defining what support looks like for me and for you, right? Because again, we're humanizing this for all of us, right? So I even consider what are some self-supporting practices for myself? I keep lavender oil on me when I'm in these classrooms. That is a self-supporting practice for me. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes if a student turns up, and I have like a so-called joyful, engaging classroom, we're dancing, that's me. No one has to duplicate. You got to be the best version of you. Music and movement and dance and colors and that's me. I need that for me. But even with all the engagement, I still will have somebody that wants to act up. And I remember my younger years, the stress level, but I said, wait a minute. I am not about to have high blood pressure because of someone else's actions. Let me be proactive. I know lavender, the aroma calms me. I know that helps me out on a personal level. And I'm a person teaching this classroom. So this is self-supporting practice. Instead of me turning and matching that emotional, think about it. If a kid says something, you address it, you redirect it, right? You reinforce whatever your procedure is or whatever your rule is. You do those things, but sometimes humans don't want to obey the rules. Don't we sometimes don't want to obey the rules ourselves? So now we got little humans that are developing into big humans that also sometimes may not want to obey the rules. Why do we act as if we're not human beings? Now, when it's a habitual practice, then that's another conversation. But even still, instead of me matching that frequency, I'm going to calm myself down. I have my little contenedor de aceite de lavender. I put a little bit on my hand. I always keep a little avocado oil because lavender dries your skin out and I don't want to be ashy and classy. I want to be classy, not ashy. And I just, all right. And my students even know, oh, she getting her lavender. Yes, I am. Because I'm modeling for them that I'm not going to react. I also narrate what's going on, especially with my elementary students and middle school. High school, I don't narrate as much because they think I'm crazy, but it just depends. I work primarily with K-8 now, but I literally will narrate. Oh, I'm interested. I've asked you several times. And this is I call this corporate Jessie. I get my lavender and I put on corporate Jessie, which I try to make it emotionless. And as a Pisces, I don't even know how that's possible. because you kind of don't know what's going on. She seems crazy. She has a lavender. Oh, yes, I'm calming down because I don't want to turn into the She-Hulk. Why would I want to do that? That's not good for you or for me, right? So I've asked you several times to sit in your chair. Instead, you are choosing to lay on the floor and crawl like, what animal, boys and girls, is that? Are we going to say, well, are worms considered animals? Yeah, they're part of the animal. Like, I narrate this. And after a while, it makes me feel better because I'm not going to hold on to this stress. I need to release it, but I need to release it in a way that is self-supporting for me and supportive for the overall classroom environment. Because while little Peter, I don't want to say Johnny, because Johnny always get played, while little Peter is having a human moment, just like I have an adult temper tantrum at times. So little Peter is having a moment, or little Paulina is having a moment. I'm going to narrate us as we navigate through the situation while we all get a little lavender oil. And I literally walk around. Okay, you just need a little bit of, let's get a little lavender, right? We can't even expect our kids to do these higher order thinking skills on an academic level if they're not even able to do that because of that amygdala hijack. If you are regularly operating and submerged in an environment that is saturated at a lower frequency of emotions, then your brain is on fight, flight, or freeze mode. I know we frequently talk about, well, oh, food scarcity. So kids come to your classroom, they need to eat something. Imagine kids coming, they now in the breakfast program. How can you even concentrate if your stomach is growling? True. How can you even do higher order thinking skills when you are experiencing shame and stress on a regular basis? True. So it's just having us being mindful of this. This is #0 judgment, right? Because the mirror is right. I'm speaking to you and I'm looking right at myself because I'm applying this to myself on a personal level, as well as for me on an occupational level. This is why when we prioritize emotional well-being, it helps cultivate fertile ground for students to develop these higher order thinking skills. And when we think about the growth of a garden, it's about being organic, right? We think about, oh, let me get some organic fertilizer. The joy factor will just organically bloom. It's not a one size fits all. And joy in one classroom is not going to be expressed the same in another classroom. I do not want teachers to think that you have to be up doing the Cabbage Patch and the Tootsie Roll, and that means that's joy. No, because many of us know by Wiggins and McTee, I have my book, I kept that, Understanding by Design. There's two twin sins of instructional design, covering material and hands-on activities that's not minds-on. So I'm not saying because we're up, hey, that means we're learning. But I'm also not going to say, hey, that it means we're not learning either, right? We need alignment, but it may not, joy is not a one size fits all, but it is an inner work, right? It is an inner experience that can be observed and felt externally, right? So I want to model this activity and you can take it back to your teams and you can transfer this activity to maybe what you could do with your homeroom. I'm only saying also homeroom or like a crew class or something smaller because it might get a little pricey and you may not be able to have 150 plants, in your classroom. Or maybe something you may want to do with your students and they take it home, but you got to consider logistics. Do you want kids putting this in their backpack? So when I do this activity, I like to do it with teachers, or I suggest doing it like with a homeroom period so that it's not like so many, right? But the concept is everyone gets like I get the little Amazon, and Meredith, I can send you the link. They're not expensive at all. Like the little pea pots, and it's made like out of cardboard. And I bring some soil in and I let some children or teachers, choose whichever seed that they want. So that's the variety. But it really is for teachers, I want us to reflect on a few things. What does water represent? And I'm going to ask you to reflect now and type it in the chat box. If you think that, I will give you one thing of what one thing definitely represents, but then I want you to consider the others. The actual pea pot or the actual pot that you use for your seedling or your seed, that is the physical classroom environment. So that's why you can decorate it, right? You may have some flowers, you may paint it. It can look, that's a physical, because there's still the four walls of your classroom, even when you're virtual, right? As Kelly mentioned, what does that virtual, there's still like a physicality with the virtual, even though that's crazy, right? So that's like the physical structure of your room. But I would like you all to reflect on what you believe each of these other elements represent in the context of your classroom. Your physical classroom environment is the plant pot, and how these things contribute to the growth of the plant, that's your content area, right? So you may have a lavender seed, you may have this seed, and honestly, you may even consider this not even from a content perspective. Maybe the daisy seed is you planting the concept of discipline in your classroom. Not discipline like I'm a disciplinarian, authoritarian, but discipline like no hay atajos sin trabajo. I start that with my kindergartners. They learn that. No hay atajos sin trabajo. We're not taking shortcuts. I say it's all about work, 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 work. So that's a seed I'm planting. And it may be for you something that's a social emotional learning goal. That could be a seed. It may be a content goal. Like, you know what? We are going to be able to conjugate these verbs. You're at a higher level. We're going to read with fluency. No, so I want you to consider right now, take about a minute or so and add to the chat box, what would water look like for whatever seed you're planting? What about that sunlight? What would temperature represent? What about air versus time? And I love to see like what you all contribute, because it's not a one size fits all. So I'm going to give us about a minute to respond. Oh, Meredith, you're amazing. Yes, those planners. And I think those are the exact ones yep, the pea pots. I think those, yep, I got the cheap one, the $9.99. So go ahead and consider what these items may be for you. Yes. 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 I'm looking at that. Thank you, man. They all speak to our basic human needs. We're basically just plants ourselves. Preach. Yo, I can't keep dropping this mic. It may not work after a while, but bars. Yes. I mean, and think about that temperature. That's why we have to regulate it, right? Your plant will not grow, your seed will not sprout if you do not consider these things. I love that, Pam, being recognized, called by name, praises. Yes. And I'll say this because I'm a traveling teacher. I'm not a full-time teacher at one school. I support different schools. Some schools I'm contracted to come once a month. Sometimes I come once a week because I'm kind of all over the place because I have to complement my kids' schedules, right? And so one thing that I feel like this year, because I go to different schools, that I struggled with was remembering names. And one little girl in the 6th grade, she would always sit next to this other girl. And I knew one of the girls' names, I'm not gonna lie, I'm being transparent, was Joni, and the other girl's name was Naomi. But I used to always, and they're best friends and they look similar. But I did not visit that class that often. I call my assistants learning facilitators. So like they would be there and then I would just come and check in, film them, provide feedback. And so one day, Joni said to me, "You've never said my name before." And I was like, "Girl." And then I had to think about it. And then at that moment, Naomi walked in. And then I was like, "Naomi?" And so now I am intentional. When I'm like, "Hola, Joni," I am so intentional. So that was conviction. Pam, what you said, being called by name. Your name that's one of the first things that you are recognized as part of your identity. And my really good friend who's is studying, I just wrote it down, we had a conversation last night. She is studying industrial organizational psychology, which working with children and being a teacher is all about organizational psychology. She told me about a concept. Oh, I thought I wrote it down. Where did it go? Where did it go? I think it was about identity management, but it was something else she had with it. Identity and access management. What's the access point that you have? Yep. Identity and take notes when I'm having conversations, just like I did today. Identity and access management. Your identity, your name is part of your identity. The way you pronounce, that's why I didn't want to butcher Brother B's name. I need to learn that and pronounce it correctamente. You know, that's what I'm calling Brother B. But
Oh,
shout out
good
to our
old brother
thing.
B.
Brother B, being
I was
recognized.
I was coming in. I was a friend of mine was telling me the other day they were reading graduation names along these lines, talking about names and like, yeah, you've never said my name kind of thing. And they will never forget when a student who had like Polynesian culture in their family said that when you say someone's name correctly, and I have to like try like not to get emotional every time I think about this, when you say somebody's name as they were named, right? Like as their parents, as their family say it, as was intended, apparently a facet of one aspect of Polynesian culture is, especially if you're being praised or congratulated, like graduation was the context, like I said, the belief is like that all of your ancestors and all of those loved ones are there with you, because when you hear your name as it is, it's like people join you, you know, which I think is super powerful. I know I'm always like, oh geez, you know, it's so easy just to say like, oh, just call me Charlie. Okay, but what do you want to be called? Like, what do you,
Yeah.
I think that's powerful.
It's almost, because again, think about what the frequencies. That's very
Mhm.
powerful. I'm taking notes so I can like
Yeah.
read up on
I'll
that.
find, I'll get some more specifics from him, but he just told me that a couple weeks ago. And I've thought
Oh,
about
I
it
love
like
it.
every day since, of just like everyone there. It's like Dr. Angelou said, when she said every time she would go on a stage, she'd say, come with me now. I need you now. She would think about her, you know, loved ones that had passed on and all those kind of things. And she'd take those people with her. It's that same kind of thing. When you say somebody's name, you know, you bring those that care about them with them.
Especially because remember, and that's why with the swag, the
Yeah.
pronunciation matters. And that's why when I'm going through a list and kids say, oh, you can do that, I say, no, I always say, how does your mama call you? Like,
What's your mom say?
what
Yeah.
does your mom say? Because I
Yeah.
need to know that, because that's part of your identity. And your
Mhm.
mother, if you're named after an ancestor, if you're named after someone,
Mhm.
you're the la lengua materna, that mother tongue
Mhm.
matters.
Yeah.
You know, so I just love the comments here. I know we're at our time. So I am gonna ask you all, I'm gonna look at this briefly, then a brief, super duper quick survey. But if you have not read Zaretta Hammond's book, Culture Responsive Teaching in the Brain, every human needs to read it, not limited to just educators, because we all educate people in one way, shape, or form. Our challenge as culture responsive teachers is knowing how to create an environment that the brain perceives as safe and nurturing so it can relax, let go of any stress, and turn its attention to learning. That that really is what this is. So I would love if you could scan this QR code and provide me some feedback. It's a quick, super duper survey, and I appreciate you and your time, because again, it is the end of the year, and you didn't have to be here. So I hope we can continue to all develop and maintain self-supporting practices for ourselves as we humanize the learning, language learning experience for our scholars.